high-level, extraplanar, crazy hoarders. On today's episode of Monster Monday, I'll be covering the Morkoth from Volo's Guide. Stay tuned. This is I'm going to start off by saying this is like a high-level starter, right? This dude's challenge rating 11. If you catch them in their lair, they're challenge rating 12. So they are not to be messed with. But you do want to mess with them. There are incentives to messing with them. Otherwise, why would you have them in an adventure game? So my first impression of the Morkoth is kind of Cthulhu-ish, right? Because they're like extraplanar. There's a whole like lore in this book that explains where they come from. Now, I'm going to share that lore with you. In summary, I'm going to share it with you because I don't want to read verbatim from this book. You can go out and buy your copy of this book legally and then read it all you want and reread it. But in essence, here's the idea, right? There was some ancient greed god that was defeated during an epic battle of the immortals, and they leave that very specifically vague so you can incorporate that in whatever game world you're playing in or into your own game world, right? This god of greed is decimated and sent out into this void where its body just becomes a husk. So imagine like the body of a deity just floating through space and maybe through time, I don't know. And then it crashes with this energy life force, and at that moment it erupts into all these different fragments and pieces that go spiraling off into different planes. The life force that it crashed with imbued the husk of the god with like life force again, right? And so from each fragment of the husk that blew up came this little growing island of life, and the entity that sprang up from this island of life is the Morkoth, a gross looking tentacled creature of extraplanar origin. Now, because they were the creations effectively of life force being re-imbued into these slivers of this greed god, what do Morkoths want? They're greedy. They want to collect things, just like the god from which they came. So they are basically extraplanar hoarders. They go around defeating things and collecting things, and they amass it on their island. And these islands float, and the Morkoths kind of take things and add more to their island, right? So that's the lore, and that's pretty cool. I kind of like it. I could work with that in a number of different ways. But if you wanted to dismiss that lore and kind of flex it or change it out to fit with your particular setting, your world that you're playing in, I think it would be pretty easy to take out the whole god of greed thing and just say that the Morkoths are, demon octopi that collect things for whatever reason, right? The origin story is cool. You can tie it in for a campaign kind of thing. And I have some ideas that I'll share about that later. But I wanted to kind of share a couple more specifics with you about what they do, how they do it, and why they do it. So a Morkoth's island has the qualities of a dreamscape in which nature and predictability take a back seat to strangeness and chaos. Upon it is a jumble of objects and a mixture of creatures, some of which date from forgotten times. An island might have natural-looking illumination, but most are shrouded in twilight, and on any of them mists and shadows can appear without notice. The environment is warm and wet, a subtropical or tropical climate that keeps the Morkoth and its guests comfortable. The pearly matter inside an island enables it to glide on planar currents, maintains the island's environment, and keeps the place safe from harmful external effects. A Morkoth's island might be found anywhere from the bottom of the ocean to the void of the astral plane. One could float in the skies of Avernus in the Nine Hells without being destroyed and without causing harm to its residents. Whatever it is on or within, a certain distance of a Morkoth's isle travels with it in its journey through the plains. Thus, people from lost civilizations and creatures or objects from bygone ages might be found within a Morkoth's dominion. Some islands travel a specific route, arriving at the same destinations regularly over a cycle of years. Others are tied to a particular place or group of locales, and still others are more erratically moved through the cosmos. Rarely a Morkoth learns to control its island's movement, so the island goes wherever its master wishes. So, That's a lot of campaign seed planting right there, friends. Think of in real life how there are like recurring like cosmological events, right? Like whether it's an eclipse or like Halley's Comet, you know, something like that, that comes back every so-and-so years. That could be, in your fantasy world, the Morkoth's Island passing through, okay? Suppose that you're running a campaign that is largely set in or around a sea, an inland sea or whatever, you know? Could you have the Morkoth's Island be a mysterious sort of Bermuda Triangle? Hell yes. For those of you who may remember the television show Lost, and maybe, you know, fondly remember it prior to the last couple seasons, you might even have that kind of scenario where your adventuring party is traveling from one place to the next via ship, and their ship goes through this strange misty shroud thing, and your players will be like, oh, the DM is taking us to Barovia for Curse of Strahd. Wrong. You're going to the island. Now, here's the clincher. At no point in time in any adventure, encounter, or campaign using the Morkoth should you indicate that this is a Morkoth. That is something that should be like the climatic discovery, right? You should have this island. You could have the island just full of strange objects. You could have molds and spores that grow on the island that emit hallucinogenic effects so that this dreamlike state occurs without your players noticing or understanding why. So for example, you have them at this island, however that happens, a shipwreck, they're on an adventure, they're captured, I don't know, whatever it is. They get to this island. There's, you know, molds and spores that release, and they make Constitution saves. If they make the Constitution save, what you should do is roll their con save privately and take a note of each. That's how I would do this. I would roll each player's con save privately and take a note of whether they made it or save it. And then I would describe things to the players, like what they see, through notes ahead of time, like little notes that I would write out of strange things that they see or hear that aren't actually happening for the people hallucinating, and I would slip them these notes. And then for the people who made their con save, I would write out a note that's like actually what they would really see. So everybody would get notes. So none of the players would know whether they made or saved their con saves. In fact, they wouldn't even know that there was a con save to be made. You might mention something like the description of the environment that they're in, where they see these molds growing on the plants, or they see these spores growing on there amongst objects that you have populated the island with, right? And maybe a player's like, I don't trust these molds and spores, so I'm going to dampen a piece of cloth and wrap it around my face. If they basically make like a respirator, then, you know, give them the benefit of the doubt. Don't even roll, or give them advantage on the con save, right? But however you implement this is just one idea that immediately popped up when I thought of this concept of a magical island, whether it floats in water, whether it floats in the sky, whether it's an extraplanar setting, whatever, you know, don't reveal that it's a Morkoth's Island. That shouldn't be what you reveal right off the bat. You might make hints to it, you know, maybe when they're at the edge of the island, they might see 100 yards out in the water, you know, they might see like a tendril kind of pass through, but they have no idea what that is. They don't know. Now, your players that are savvy and maybe have more experience, or those who have been DMs and maybe know more of what's in these monster books, they might have an inkling that it's a Morkoth. But always remember that as the DM, you have the right to discreetly tell a player that they need to not meta game. In other words, like if a player's like, oh, it's a Morkoth, you know, ask that player, like, what's your character's Arcana proficiency rank? Go ahead and make a roll. And then regardless of the roll, you could say, well, you're not really sure if it's a Morkoth. And your character actually has never even heard of a Morkoth. So, you know, it might be one of those things where I hate to police people with metagaming, but like, if you play this right, if you run this adventure right, you shouldn't have to do that. Hopefully you shouldn't have to do that, because you're never giving away what is actually like kind of tied to this island, right? Now, how do we populate the island? That is another fun thing, right? Now, here's something. There's no chart for populating the island of a Morkoth. So maybe someone on the internet made that, or maybe if I find myself with free time, I'll make a chart and I'll share it with you guys in the description below, like maybe a sheet, a Google sheet that gives you randomly generated crap. Or just, go online and look for like random treasure generator, random trinket generator, because there are a bunch of websites that already do that. So why would I create the wheel? But the idea is that you don't want it to all just be treasure. It should be random crap too, right? It could be trinkets. It could be like, small boats. It could be wagons. It could be the skeletons of horses. You could have living creatures there. As they kind of indicated here, there could be other people, right? So this could be easily an adventure that takes 1 session or 3 or 4 sessions, depending on how long you want to stretch it out. But what I see with this Morkoth is an opportunity for mystery, okay? And again, I'm going to reference the TV show Lost. If you haven't seen it, go watch the first few seasons. But the idea is, a Bermuda Triangle sort of situation where, there's a crash and people find themselves on this island, and they, episode by episode, they begin to discover that they're not the only ones on this island. And there are other strange anomalies on this island, like a tropical island with a polar bear there. Why would there be a polar bear at a tropical island? Why are there other people who seem to be living primitively who have not introduced themselves, that kind of stuff. So you could take this from an adventure into a campaign, and it could be a dope campaign, or at least a big part of a campaign. A lot of times when DMs get to high level, it becomes challenging. It becomes challenging because the characters are so powerful that the game loses its luster when it comes to just combat, right? Especially if you play with a group of people who know how to build, who are optimizers. They know how to build kick-ass characters who can just unleash a ton of damage, right? And they buff each other, they work together as a team. Don't penalize them. When you get to high level, you have to start challenging the players in other ways, not just by throwing bigger monsters at them. The Morkoth is not just a defeat this monster kind of monster. Now, it can be, but you should build up to this. You should take advantage of the secret pillar of mystery, and in D&D, it's often described as like, social interaction, exploration, and combat. Yes, it's all of those things, but like exploration should be a big component of the adventure or series of adventures that you set up where you're using the Morkoth. And mystery, the unknown. Where did this island come from? Why are we here? Why are we trapped on it? Where are we actually? Is this real, or is it a dream or a hallucination? Don't make that clear initially. You have to kind of tease these things out, right? If you use my previous example of a hallucinogenic molds or spores, and you're secretly keeping track of who's made and who's failed their saving throws, and you have these little random notes of things that they experience, your players might choose to share what they're experiencing, what their character's experiencing with the rest of the group. They might deduce that some of them are tripping. They might figure out that some of them are hallucinating, and they might work together to try to, maybe somebody does like a lesser restoration and now they're not poisoned anymore or whatever. So they can remove those conditions and work together. But then there's going to be other kind of strange, mysterious things that don't make sense. Then maybe they start to wonder, is this all a dream? Well, you know that it's not, but they don't know that. So let them run with that. Give them some freedom and give them continually strange things. Have them run across random other individual creatures or people, as well as other factions. I mean, who knows? Maybe this Morkoth's Island has collected people over time and space from different places. This could be a real opportunity for you to kind of cross genres. Now, I will say this as a warning. Don't go crazy, okay? I don't know that you necessarily need to have guys running around with laser pistols. I don't mean you necessarily need to go that hardcore with crossing your genres or like cowboys, But maybe you have some strange sort of alien other races, and then like normal quote unquote races. Or you have some races from the Fey wild and some races from different, material planes, and a mix of good and neutral and evil aligned creatures and people and individuals and factions might create many, many stories in this situation, right? Now, if at a certain point you're ready to reveal that the island is actually a Morkoth's island, how do you reveal that? Well, you could have the party like organically discover that, Maybe maybe they find this deep, deep cave. And the further they go down to the cave, the closer they get to the bottom of the island. And when they get to the bottom of the island, they find like the Morkoth, like sleeping, right? Like they look through this hole and they see this enormous thing, right? Now, what I think is funny is the Morkoth itself is described as a medium aberration. I'd like to flex my muscles and say, what if it wasn't? What if it was gargantuan or colossal? You could do that. You could have it underneath its island, kind of in a Cthulhu sleep. Yes. There's so much cool stuff that you can do with this. Morkoths are driven by greed and selfishness mixed with yearning for conflict. They desire anything they don't possess. They have no scruples about taking what they crave, and they endeavor to keep everything they collect. A Morkoth spends its time watching over its collection and plotting to acquire more possessions. The monster hoards vast stores of treasures and knowledge. Its island holds numerous captives, which it considers part of its collection. Some inhabitants, such as descendants of original prisoners, might view the Morkoth as a ruler or a god. There's another little story faction thread. The dragon turtle is a great example of a huge, huge creature, right? That is so big that it can sustain an ecosystem on itself. Well, imagine if you have the mother Morkoth that is basically encrusted into the island, and then you have smaller Morkoths that like roam around the island collecting and organizing, or that like leave the island and go to adjacent areas to steal and take things and bring back to the island. What if that was your variation on this? So you have your medium-sized aberration Morkoths, who are the servitor Morkoths, and then you have the mother. Or if you want to keep it gender neutral, just the great them. That could be your Morkoth. That's basically the crust of the island, right? A Morkoth knows every object in its collection and can track its possessions through the plains. Through the plains! That's like Uber version of locate object. Someone who dares to steal from a Morkoth or breaks a deal with one will know no rest until the Morkoth is slain or all promises are kept. Okay, variation on a story thread. What if you have a high-level adventurer who's a friend of or an ally of your group, your party, and that person went off on a side quest and returned with a powerful magic item, and maybe went on a couple adventures with the group, as a friend, ally, NPC. And what they didn't tell the group was where they got it. Now maybe your group's like, where'd you get that dope item? And they're like, well, I actually used a potion to move to the astral plane, and I found this mysterious floating island, and it had all these wondrous and strange things and trinkets, and I found this there. Okay. So they might not think twice about that. A couple adventures later, the Morkoth is coming for its crystal ball or whatever the ally took. And now the party is like, dude, what did you do? Ray, what did you do? You know what I mean? So maybe their friend is actually inadvertently the reason why the Morkoth has arrived. Wrap that up and eat it, Carafa. A Morkoth claims dominion over an entire island, and it also maintains a central sanctum on that isle. This lair is most often a twisted network of narrow tunnels that connect several underground chambers, although other structural forms might be incorporated. The Morkoth dwells among its most prized possessions in a spacious vault at the core of the warren, where the pearly matter of the island is also kept. Sections of the lair and its center might be dry and better to protect and preserve collected objects and creatures, but most of the lair is underwater. A Morkoth encountered in its lair has a challenge rating of 12 instead of 11, Ooh. Well, let's take a look at the stat block. I've talked a lot about how we could use these in adventures and campaigns. I think there's a lot of inspiration to be drawn. But let's take a look at how these creatures actually stack up. So the Morkoth stat block for 5th edition, medium aberration, armor class 17, hit points 20 d8 plus 40. That's a lot. It has a regular land speed and a swim speed. It has damage resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing from non-magical attacks. That makes sense. It has blind sight, dark vision, and a passive perception of 20. Good lord. Its languages are telepathy, 120 feet. That makes sense as well. It's an otherworldly extraplanar creature. Why would it need to speak to you? Challenge rating 11. It is amphibious. It has spells. Spellcasting is an 11th level spellcaster. Using its intelligence, which is intelligence of 20. Holy crap, I had no idea. That is a powerful wizard creature, yo. Save is DC 17, plus 9 to hit with spell attacks. So when you think about those who've tried to go up against the Morkoth, they must be pretty darn powerful, right? And maybe many who went up against the Morkoth failed and were killed, and all of their possessions were added to the Morkoth's treasure hoard. Or they were defeated and became slaves to the Morkoth on the island. Even more story options. Cantrips, Acid Splash, Mage Hand, Mending, Ray of Frost, Shocking Grasp. I could see Mage Hand being fun to use if you put your party into the scenario where they're hallucinating and they see things floating through the air. Because sometimes they could be hallucinations and sometimes they could actually be things floating through the air using Mage Hand, which is dope. They also have Darkness, Detect Thoughts, Shatter, Detect Magic, Identify, Shield, Witch Bolt, Dispel Magic, Lightning Bolt, Sending, Dimension Door, Everard's Black Tentacles, Geas, Geas, I forgot how to pronounce that. It's basically when you send someone on a forced quest that they have to complete. That's a powerful spell. Scrying, and Chain Lightning at 6th level. Chain Lightning to punish thine foes. There's a ton of fun spells in that pack right there. I mean, Detect Magic, right? So like the Morkoths can figure out what your party's carrying. They can detect that magic. They can identify it. Yep. All good right there. They can cast Darkness to disorient your party. They can detect thoughts to use against your party and then telepathically communicate and whisper things to them. This is a trippy adventure. This is shaping up to be a mess with your mind adventure for your party, which is great because, like I said, at high level, the game gets boring if all you do is just keep throwing more powerful monsters against the heroes. You've got to do something that is narrative, that is a story-driven kind of component. And the coupling of exploration, this island, the social interaction with the denizens of this island, and the mystery of trying to solve, like, what the heck is going on with this place, right? All of those are going to make for a much better high-level adventure than just being like, here's a Morkoth, roll initiative. Okay? I'm sorry I did that in the dummy voice, but that's what a dummy would say. Here's a Morkoth, roll initiative. No, if you do that, you suck. Get better. All right, multi-attack. The Morkoth makes 3 attacks, 2 with its bite and 1 with its tentacles. The bite and the tentacles are all ouchy ouchy. The tentacles can do all the things that you think they would be able to do, like grappling and restraining. Then they have hypnosis. What? The Morkoth projects a 30-foot cone of magical energy. Each creature must make a DC 17 wisdom save. On a failed save, the creature is charmed by the Morkoth for 1 minute. While charmed in this way, the target tries to get as close to the Morkoth as possible, using its actions to dash until it is within 5 feet of the Morkoth. A charmed target can repeat the saving throw at the end of each of its turns and whenever it takes damage, ending the effect on itself on a success. If a creature's saving throw is successful, the creature has advantage on saving throws against the Morkoth's hypnosis for 24 hours. So it could basically hypnotize you, bring it in with its tractor beam, and then be like, tentacles bite. I like that. Now, here's a cool thing. It's a reaction, and it's called spell reflection. Carafa. If the Morkoth makes a successful saving throw against a spell or a spell attack misses it, the Morkoth can choose another creature, including that very spellcaster, it can see within 120 feet of it. The spell targets the chosen creature instead of the Morkoth. If the spell forced a saving throw, the chosen creature makes its own save. If the spell was an attack, the attack roll is re-rolled against the chosen creature. That is splendid. That is splendid. That is wonderful. Ooh. Imagine the surprise of your party, your high-level party, when they try to launch a spell off on this thing and they fail, and then it bounces back at their friend. The Morkoth can choose another creature to bounce the spell off. That's an important thing. It can choose. And when you think of this as not a dummy creature, this is an intelligence 20 creature, it is absolutely realistic that the Morkoth would strategically choose the most wounded member of the party to bounce that spell off onto, right? Thin out the herd, you know what I'm saying? Death saves. All right, now, as if that wasn't enough, remember that this thing basically moves with its lair. I'm trying to think of a creature whose lair is not locked into one position, who moves with its lair. And I can't, off the top of my head, think of such a creature. So if you can think of a creature whose lair moves with it, please comment below and let me know, because I might have to cover that creature next. This is a dope concept. But the Morkoth basically moves with its lair, so it gets lair actions, unless they lure it out of its lair. But let's read. When fighting inside its lair, a Morkoth can invoke the ambient magic of the island to take lair actions. On initiative count 20, the Morkoth takes a lair action to cause one of the effects described below. The Morkoth uses its hypnosis action, originating at a point within 120 feet of itself. It doesn't need to see the effect's point of origin. Good God. The Morkoth casts Darkness, Dispel Magic, or Misty Step, using Intelligence as its spellcasting ability and without expending a spell slot. Without expending a spell slot? Oh, wow, dude. How do you even ever catch it? Regional effects. The island surrounding a Morkoth's lair is warped by the creature's presence, creating the following effects. The Morkoth is aware of any new arrival, whether an object or a creature, on its island or in its sanctum. As an action, the Morkoth can locate any one creature or object on the island. Visitors to the island feel as though they are being watched even when they aren't. This invokes the paranoia that I'm talking about, right? Between the hallucinations and the hypnosis and the detect thoughts and the telepathic whispers and the mage hand moving things around and random spots of darkness disorienting people. This is amazing. I could stretch, I might even write an entire campaign and just start playing it. What if I did this to the guys playing Moonsea Adventures just to ruin their lives? Oh, yeah. Each time a creature that has been on the island for less than a year finishes a short or long rest, it must make a DC 10 intelligence check, investigation check. On a failure, the creature has misplaced one possession, chosen by the player if the creature is that player's character. The possession remains nearby, but concealed for a short time, so it can be recovered with a successful DC 15 Wisdom perception check. An object that is misplaced but not recovered ends up in the Morkoth's lair 1 hour later. If the creature later goes to the Morkoth's lair, its lost possessions stand out in its perception and are easily recovered. So that's another way to kind of mess with them. Mysteriously, like, missing objects. And maybe not even, like, seemingly important objects, right? Now, this says that the player gets to choose which object's missing. They don't say how the player chooses. So you could have a list of their entire inventory and have them roll an appropriate die or dice to determine which object randomly goes. It could be like a flask of oil, or like a water skin, or a rope, or it could be like, you know, some other valuable, like some gems that they have. Whatever it is, though, it'll be cool to see this progress, like, as they continue around the island. They just start, like, losing things, right? I love this. Entrances to the Morkoth's lair have an enchantment that the Morkoth can activate or suppress at any time while it's in its lair and not incapacitated. At any time. Any creature within 30 feet of such an entrance and able to see it must make a DC 15 Wisdom save. On a failed save, the creature feels an intense urge to use its movement on each of its turns to enter the lair and to move toward the Morkoth's location. The target doesn't realize it's heading toward a creature. The target moves toward the Morkoth by the most direct route. As soon as it can see the Morkoth, the target can repeat the saving throw, ending the effect on itself on a success. It can also repeat the saving throw at the end of each of its turns and every time it takes damage. That's a variety of different ways in which the Morkoth can mess with people and lure them in. All right, now this is kind of a cool effect, but I could see you using it very narratively. A good DM could use this very narratively to add mystery and the unknown, okay? With a thought, no action required, the Morkoth can initiate a change in the water within its lair that takes effect 1 minute later. The water can be as breathable and clear as air, or it can be normal water ranging in clarity from murky to clear. That's kind of a cool, yet again, like with the darkness, with the mage hand, with the shatter, like random effects happening or seemingly random effects happening, is all the Morkoth manipulating this stuff. And last but not least, of course, if the Morkoth dies, these regional effects end immediately. So how do we go? What direction do we go with? There are so many options, and I tried to share a few of these with you guys in terms of ways that you could do this. You could have a single medium-sized Morkoth on a island of treasure and strange things. You could have a mothership Morkoth, a big one. If your party's like, 15th level or higher, maybe that's what you do. You have a big Morkoth, and then you have a couple minion Morkoths. But honestly, with the abilities of what they could do just in a stat block, one Morkoth could create in a whole cool adventure, right? Because you're not even considering the other denizens of their island, the other pitfalls and dangers of their island. What if you did this, but if the party never figured out it was a Morkoth? How does that adventure end? This is where I'm kind of flexing my creative muscles here, guys. So bear with me. Because in every episode of Monster Monday, I always try to share with you how you can scale. And so far, everything has been very focused for high level because I think that's the intent of the Morkoth. But here's the clincher. If you wanted to do this adventure, if you wanted to do the Morkoth's Isle and not TPK a mid-level or low-level party, then you don't have them ever encounter the Morkoth. You have the Morkoth constantly evade them. And instead of being malicious and out to kill them, the Morkoth is simply there to lure them in to entertain the Morkoth. So your mid-level party or your low-level party, one way or the other, they find themselves on this strange island, hallucinating, darkness, random things flying through the air, shattering effects, and they are not at war with the Morkoth because they don't even know that this is the Morkoth's island. They are actually just out to survive. So in other words, in the same way that you would design an adventure where your party at low level or mid level arrives on an island, and that island has certain needs to be explored, and they have to explore the island and find fresh water supplies, and they have to find food, and while they're there, they encounter, appropriately matched combat obstacles, right? If it's low level, maybe you have some of the factions on the island be low level factions, goblins, kobolds, whatever. If it's mid level, you can mix it up with some other kinds of factions. But at no point in time do you actually reveal that this is a Morkoth, and you kind of take it easy in terms of the Morkoth doing offensively damaging things to the party. And that is how you could take a CR 11 or challenge rating 12 lair Morkoth and scale it down to still be effective and still use all the same narrative tools of exploration and mystery on this island setting for mid-level or low-level. That's my thought. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this exploration with the Morkoth, and I got a kick out of researching this dude and thinking about the different ways that you can implement it. And like I said in the beginning, either read the lore, that's in the book, because I think it's great actually. Sometimes I'm not really into the lore that they write, or I think it's too simple, but this I think was perfect. It was a perfect fit for this creature. And I think that you can use that as it is written in the book, or you could flex out your own muscles and say that in your world, the Morkoths weren't created by some god who crashed into a piece of life-giving energy force in space. Maybe the Morkoth's just an ancient race that lives in the oceans in your world. And they're not extraplanar anymore, but they still kind of function in the same way. And you could scale them. You can do this at high level as it was intended, or mid-level or low level, and just scale it down and make it more about exploration and mystery. So I think you could have a lot of fun with this. I hope you liked it. Make sure that you like and subscribe, please, because it doesn't cost you any money to subscribe. Or if you find yourself with a few extra bucks and you want to support my ongoing mission to share my knowledge of role-playing games and bring the role-playing game to the rest of the world, then you can join my Patreon and support me that way too. Either way, I appreciate your watching this video, and I will see you on the next episode of Monster Monday. Morkoth! Not which dead eternal lies, darker eons death may die. That's some Cthulhu level shit, man. You know what? Do that again and I'll f***ing stab you. Alright.
With what?
With an 8-sided die, because it's sharp and pointy. That's Metallica, Carafa. It's a band that came out a long time ago when Carafa was just an itty-bitty baby.
Well, hello, and welcome to Bill Allen World. I am Wizzy, the Wizard. I'm back once again to remind you to subscribe and click on the notifications button, and also watch videos that are over there. Tune in to the next episode of whatever show you were just watching and watch other shows featuring Bill. He made me say that because he's a narcissist. Okay, bye.